Welcome, Chris, to Talking Apes. We're very excited to talk to you for a couple key reasons. I know that the past few episodes that we've maybe taken a few liberties at the expense of our valued wholesale partners in our industry, and I know that you come from a very storied background in wholesale distribution. And before we get into that, maybe you could kind of tell a little bit about yourself to our audience and kind of
Sure.
What's your story? What's your background?
Sure.
Who is Chris Rupp?
Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. First of all, thank you for having me on this platform. I think you guys are doing a tremendous job, and it's something that's needed for our industry. Not only broadcasting and inviting some younger talent into the business, but also just to make awareness, I guess, to the different industry that's out there. Mm-hmm. So for myself, I got involved in the wholesale business in 1997. Fresh out of high school, I moved to Hawaii with some friends, rented a house, came back, and realized I needed a full. I came back. We rented 6 months. That's as long as they would keep me.
But I heard when you came back there was like a mohawk involved, and there was.
No. I'll tell you about that stuff later. Those are further. I actually lost a bet with a plumber. So.
Oh, fantastic.
But anywho, I realized I needed a full-time job. I had to pay for that trip that I just had. So started in the industry, kind of working in the warehouse and in the yard. And this gentleman named Wayne Walker would tour all the branches every quarter. And on those days, you knew he was coming around because all the salesmen would wear suit and ties that day. You're like, whoa, what's going on? You guys are in ripped jeans, usually in T-shirts. And the unique thing about Wayne was he'd go around and he'd talk to all the staff, and he'd introduce himself, find out what they actually did for him at the building and what they wanted to do. And so the second trip through, say 6 months into my tenure at Western Supplies, Wayne remembered my name. I was like, wow, this guy has tens of thousands of employees. Like, for somebody to remember a kid's name working in the warehouse in Grand Prairie. Mm-hmm. That's
it was
cool,
in Grand
right?
Prairie. Okay.
I
figured it was in Edmonton. Okay. Grand Prairie. Very cool.
Yeah. So, anyways, I enjoyed my time there. And, through that process, I was accepted into dentistry school at U of A. That was my ultimate goal. I left in the summer of 98, Western and Grand Prairie, moved to Edmonton. And Wayne had asked me to help set up a warehouse for a new wholesaler he was opening. So I agreed to do that throughout the summer. And I tried to leave a few times, and he would never let me go. He's like, listen, kid, we got other things for you. There's a future here. So 23 years later, and here I am. But you know what? I really love the industry. I love the people. You can make a livelihood at it, and it's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. It is interesting that you point out one of the qualities of Wayne walking through and meeting people and getting to know their name. I've seen that, especially in Wayne's generation. In BC, I saw Jim Pattison. I would do the plumbing
Pattison Lease?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And so he owns all the Save On Foods, and our company did all the Save On Foods, all the water purification, all that. And so during the store opening, he would come walk through, and we'd be walking through the system that we just did. And every employee, it was like the conversation stopped and his attention was diverted, and it was a handshake. Hey, what's your name? Thank you for working for me and the Save On Group, and so on and so forth. And it was true. Like, once he met you once, he knew the name. Mm-hmm. And it shocked me. It really changed my perspective on getting into being a manager and taking the time to walk through the branches, the stores, everything. Mm-hmm. That's great to hear that.
And that was the same thing for me, Jeff. So learning that at a very young age from Wayne and not really knowing where I was going in the industry, it was one of my big takeaways from Wayne was that personal touch, right? So looking a guy in the eyes, shaking his hand, and actually getting to know him, and maybe when he's there for a little longer, you get to know about his family and really showing a sense of care.
Yes.
in your people.
So tell me a little bit, Chris, about your progression through within the organization that you kind of started the warehouse for, and then we'd love to kind of learn a little bit more about the growth and
I want to get to the Mohawk.
I do want to get to the Mohawk. We probably met, I would say 7-ish years ago. Kind of when I was starting out in the industry myself. And we met when you were in a very, very well-established management position within the organization. And I'm very curious to know kind of what was the progression from, hey, I want you to kind of, start up this new warehouse distribution facility I'm opening up in Edmonton to, to that point where you were running the Edmonton location, assisting with Red Deer, and kind of had this, purview over Northern Alberta that then transitioned into, a more of a role. Just kind of curious to know, one, what did you notice? What did you learn along the way? And was there, anything that, kind of any interesting things that you can kind of remember from the industry, probably from, the early 2000s and how that, is different now?
I hope you're taking notes. There was a lot of questions there.
It was a very loaded question.
It's certainly transformed a lot, the industry as a whole, right? So in my young days, again, I helped set up the warehouse and worked the counter and worked receiving, shipping, jumping in a truck and doing deliveries. I mean, we didn't have the infrastructure as a newer kind of wholesaler in town, so we kind of did it all. So it gave me a good idea on all the different positions and how to excel at them, I guess, through trial and error. With Wayne in the background mentoring all of us. So it was all about customer service, right? Taking care of the customer, and doing those little things. And like I said, a lot of times it was Saturdays and Sundays coming in and actually doing the receiving or filling the shelves because you just didn't have time during the week. So as we did that, we built a really strong team that also had those same goals and morals, and then we grew the business. So for myself, as I grew to more of a counter position, started building relationships with contractors when they would come in. And obviously they became like friends. They were family, right? So it was more than just business. And then an opportunity came up where, okay, we need an outside sales guy. What do you think? And as green as I could be, I was like, no, never. Like, I don't know what to do, right? So I did that for a little while, and I was really struggling. I didn't know how to cold call. So a gentleman by the name of Jeff Roach, a friend of mine today, Jeff would say, okay, back up your truck to the dock. We're loading it up. And he'd fill it. We'd put 30 toilets on there and a couple water heaters. And he goes, I don't want to see you back at the building till this is all gone. I'm like, are you kidding me, man? Where am I going? He's like, I don't care. I don't care if you have to sell on the side of the highway. Do not come back till it's gone, and then we're going to reload you again.
Oh,
so
man. The lunches were very long in those days, eh? I'm not.
Yeah. So I just started driving, and I did Cold Lake, Bonnyville, Lloydminster, that whole area, and started building a rapport with those guys. And they're like, "Hey, geez, if you got a truck and you're willing to do this, can you actually bring me some stuff I need?"
Yeah.
Here's a real order.
Yeah.
Come back in 2 weeks and we'll take it from you.
Well, back in those days, we were still selling like purple and bone and green toilets, right?
Oh,
Walked into a house and I saw a black toilet, and it wasn't like one of those $10,000 black toilets. It was a Walmart special $13.75 black toilet, and I just kind of looked at it. I think it was a rental apartment that I was looking at.
Oh, Chris was here. Is that what
yeah. And we went to take a look at it, and I said, "Who in their right mind buys colored toilets?" And it's so funny because that whole trend has just gone completely away for the most part. And it's so interesting to kind of just small things that you notice in the industry that happen over time. But please go ahead. You were kind of saying, moving from that to different territories.
So basically, as I started to niche out little territories as we were growing and adding the infrastructure with inside sales and so on to help support me as the face of the company, we would hire sales guys to take on those territories and maintain them, and I would go and tackle a new territory, I guess. And so we were able to keep doing that, and eventually we had 4 sales guys and kind of Northern Alberta covered, and continued growth. So, it was a lot of fun. I was mentored by some very good people. Wayne was always in the background, guys like Jeff that are old school, and, this is the way it has to be done. And building those key relationships with a lot of guys that are still close friends of mine today.
Mm-hmm.
Then I guess after 10 years in outside sales, had a lot of fun, had a lot of growth, made some money. We decided that we were going to open a waterworks division. Mm. And again, not knowing anything about that industry at all, I raised my hand and I said, "Let's do this." Right? I got the passion to succeed and figure it out. Yeah. And within the first month, I got $1 million order.
Holy! Do you remember what the project was?
I don't offhand. It was with a contractor in Nisku.
Nisku, okay.
Yeah, Cran Construction.
Mm-hmm.
So they've been around a long time, and the old guy and myself got along and hit it off right away. And he goes, "Geez, I got this big job. I think it was out in Vermilion." Mm. And he goes, "Do you want it?" I said, "Yeah." I want to look like a hero.
I'm going to need a bigger truck, he said.
yeah, exactly. It's going to take me a lot of time to deliver this stuff to you. But anyways, yeah. So we grew that, and I was able to add some key pieces along the way and get into the pump side of the business by hiring Dan Muchler, who's again a close friend of mine. His mm-hmm. dad Jerry was a John Wood rep for years in Alberta, mm-hmm. and then we flipped that all into just waterworks into waterworks and pumps and doing wastewater treatment plants and so on and so forth. So diversifying to cover off the whole gamut of everything under the ground.
Yeah,
for water and sewer.
And so going from there, my assumption is kind of the waterworks division grew. Yeah. How did you kind of transition back into kind of being the leader of both the plumbing and the waterworks divisions?
So essentially what happened was, as I hired Dan, I started mentoring him into what Frontier was all about, and how we went to business, and then I basically passed the reins off to him. So I had it in the back of my mind that I was going to get back in the plumbing side full time. So I hired Dan. Dan was the interim manager, and then I pushed him into a branch manager role, which he's still in today. And then how the transition happened with the plumbing side is a gentleman by the name of Perry Flater, who was our branch manager, moved to our head office in Calgary, and then I took over the branch manager position in Edmonton.
Very nice.
So managing a team of 3 in the waterworks to managing a team of 40. So that was certainly a challenge, and it took some getting used to. But more of a full-time psychologist than anything. But it was fun.
Yeah.
So maybe you can take us through that. So you're managing a team of 40. This is something that is of great interest to me, as someone who hasn't had a ton of experience managing people.
Yeah.
What would you say were kind of some key guiding things that you maybe took to your approach in management, and what were the major focuses of cultivating your image and your brand as a manager?
Well, I think for starters, important for me was having those mentors that I could always reach out to and ask them certain things at any given time. So I didn't make a wrong decision. Mm-hmm. So having those people that I can rely on to help me through it. And then from there, it was understanding our team, getting to know them as people, understanding what their goals were in life, mm-hmm. And then try to guide them along the way so mm-hmm. they could reach that potential. So that was important. And then just little things like, Friday afternoon, if our receiving was backlogged, I would be the first one to jump in and help them out. So when mm-hmm. they went home at the end of the day, they felt good about their job. The warehouse was clean. Monday, they come in with clean slates. So mm-hmm. jumping in and being a part of any one of those positions, I guess.
Absolutely. That's very interesting, because I haven't come across very many, branch leaders, distribution, DC leaders that are, willing and able to just jump in, get their hands dirty with pretty much anything and everything. And I think maybe you have a unique advantage in that sense, because you kind of worked through pretty much any and all of those roles within the organization to kind of know them pretty well, and not maybe be a liability, but in fact be able to add to the team, and then add your expertise and add your value to the individuals that are, that need the help or have a bit of a backlog.
Yeah. Yeah, because I knew all those positions, I'd worked them. Obviously, I was able to jump in and help any one of them out. But being mentored by some old school guys, where I think that's what they did back in the day, they jumped in and did whatever. I was willing to as well. I mean, I was just another guy that was part of the team.
Yeah.
And something I'm extremely proud of is when we went through the big economic booms. We had very little turnover at Frontier because of the family atmosphere we had created. So, we all worked hard, but we played hard together. We got together on weekends. We built parks for low-income housing associations. We involved ourselves in a lot of charity work. I'm still an active member with the Stollery Children's Hospital. Something we started with my days at Frontier.
Yeah, and you were coaching as well, all in that too, weren't you?
I coached minor hockey and minor football for years. Yeah.
So, I was soccer and baseball. Yeah, that's cool.
It was a lot of fun, but you want to be involved in your kids' lives as well, right?
Yeah.
So business did take a lot of time, but you always take those. Make sure you set away some time to do that with your family.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, maybe to kind of have a bit of a pivot from, yourself, the reason I'd like to always start off with a bit of background, because it gives us an understanding of, where you're coming from, what your goals are, what your philosophy is to business, to life, to, give us an idea of work ethic, so that when we do follow up with some questions to learn a bit more about your role, your perspective, and your outlook on the industry, then we can kind of gauge where you're coming from. And perhaps this is a good point to maybe pivot to something that, both Jeff and I have been itching to kind of get behind the curtains on, which is something that, Jeff brought up over the last couple of episodes with guests that haven't quite aired yet, is made in Canada, and in emphasis on Canadian-made product and supporting nationalistic organizations that are sourced and completely produced here. I know Jeff's perspective. I'll kind of let Jeff kind of get into what your thought.
Yeah, well, what it was we actually we had an energy advisor come on who does consulting for government, and the government would lay out the specs, but it would give no brand names, and I found it interesting and maybe a little disappointing that there wasn't a preferential treatment for a Canadian product, being that it's Canadian government. And then I think these times especially, I think everybody's on a big push to support local, right? And especially in Alberta, because Alberta's been, sucking wind in economy for a few years. So I think now it's even more of we not only do we have to support local in our cities, in our towns, in our cities, in our province, but the country, right?
Absolutely.
So when you would look at products and bringing products on the shelf, how important was it that it was a Canadian product?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, you're right. What we're facing today, I think it's going to be more relevant moving forward in every industry. In fact, last night I was thinking about this, at a grocery store. They should have sections laid out with made in Canada or made in Alberta product, right? And bringing that to the forefront so people can support the local farmers or supporting the local clothing makers.
Yep.
For us, I guess it was a lot of times those decisions are made at head office, and it has to do with certain things, right? Dollars and cents, rebate, what have you. But for me personally, I would always prefer to buy a Canadian-made product. Obviously, right? You want to support something that's made in Canada.
Yeah, and so the follow-up on that was and especially the government projects, because some of those projects are quite hefty bills, right? I mean, we're talking multi-million dollars, and so for him it was a dollar and cents thing too, right? It was some people aren't going to tolerate it. As a taxpayer, we're always going to question why. And I thought, well, what is that tolerance level, right? When we say it's a dollars and cents thing, is it 0%? Like half of our population does not give a shit that it's Canadian. Like we need to be running lean, period. What is it? 5%, 10%, 15%? What is the cost where that Canadian flag it makes a decision for people, right? And so, I mean, you dealt with a wide spectrum of people, and I think Albertans are more wholly pro-Canadian products.
Yes.
So did you ever find out, or what would be your best guess at a tolerance for that percentage higher?
Oh, well, today's a different day and age. So I've been out of the wholesale business for a few years.
10
right?
years ago versus like a year ago versus like what do you think the importance and what percentage do you think people would pay more in order to support local being Canadian?
10 years ago, they'd probably be willing to spend 20-25% more for Canadian made product. I honestly believe that. I mean, we were selling lines like, Vresh sold us a line of Toto toilets.
Yep.
I mean, they were quite a bit more expensive than anything on the market, but we absolutely blew it up because of the quality it had, and people knew that it was, it was something that you're going to have. It's an investment.
Yep.
Now today, I think that tolerance is a lot less, obviously, because of the economic times we're facing. So I would say, we're probably in the 10% range. Even that might be a little bit tough because everybody's watching budgets and.
But do you think that that's because that maybe the branding, maybe the made in Canada is not making it to the end user?
Absolutely, sure, yeah.
So
I don't think it's pushed enough. No.
Yeah, yeah, and that's where I think that's where I think it's kind of frustrating that message isn't carried. Like it should almost be like in a new home or a new building, these are the products that are Canadian manufactured.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to emphasize that.
So do you think that it would maybe be in the best interest to have almost some kind of a PSA, some kind of an educational video, one of those like informational videos that you have where the guy is scribbling and drawing something and then it flips the page and then he's drawing something else and it's all about like emphasis on Canadian made and like learn more about what goes into your home, and because reaching the consumer, we've proven that in our industry it's relatively tough to take quality mechanical products outside of the shiny fashion stuff like toilets and fixtures.
Well, you know where I would like it to start. Like let's use new home construction as an example, right?
Yeah.
I would say, okay, this is the cost of building your home. This is the cost of building your home if we use these Canadian products.
Right.
Right? And give them an option because it doesn't really change framing. We know all the wood's being from Canada. Like we know that there's a lot of bones to the house that are Canadian made, right?
Yeah.
But if it was like, okay, we're going to change to a Canadian manufactured product, a boiler or a furnace or something like that, and those cost 15% more because to source the products, we pay more because of our weak dollar, right?
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, so it's going to cost you $40,000 more broken out over 25 years. This is what your mortgage payment would be to support Canada.
Yeah.
Do you think that would result in the end user paying 10, 15, 20% more? Would
I
you?
don't see why it wouldn't.
Would
when
you?
Look at it. I absolutely would.
I mean, especially if you
100%.
can have it, like you said, broken down into an individual mortgage payment where the customer can see, okay, it's $32 biweekly for me to pay for everything to be Canadian. Is that worth my time? Is that because at the end of the day, that $32 is indirectly going back into your pocket, in a delayed, stepped out manner because you're supporting the economy. And I think that if people had that option. I know I would pick it even if I couldn't afford it, just because I know that one, if something goes wrong, I can call a tech support line here, and I know that the product is made here, and I know that if I need a replacement, I can have it here, relatively quickly.
Right.
And I know that the organization here that's the key thing. It can be a Canadian company. That's fine. But there's a lot of Canadian companies that don't make product here.
Yeah.
Like that's a very clear distinction to make. I mean, I worked with an organization that did a bit of both. I worked at Bibby, and I worked, Bibby, which also has the Wade component, a division under which I worked. And the Bibby Sinqua product is made right in Quebec. It's made from scrap, iron. It's a cast iron soil pipe product, phenomenal product, made in Canada. They do a great job of promoting that. But then the other side of their business is, and that's a big theme for the entirety of their of the group, the parent company that they work for. It's all made in Canada, made in U.S. It's an American conglomerate that owns all of these plumbing and waterworks companies. But on the flip side, they also have they also have products and divisions like the Wade, for example, that's pretty much 90% made in China.
Yep.
And that's not just Wade. That's, all the competitors in the marketplace, the Zerns, the MyFab, the Smith, the Watts, everybody's made in, next door plants in China. So it's
So to be competitive, you guys have to source it from the same country with the same labor.
Right? I mean, it becomes that kind of an issue.
But that is wholly why I'm asking the question. I worked for a Canadian manufacturer, and we used to bring contractors out to New Brunswick, and I used to ask them pointed, like, now that you guys know it's Canadian, now you know how it's made, you've seen the people, you know the research and development that's going into it. If I was 10% higher than a non-Canadian product, are you going to buy this product? No, now, like, what is it value? Like, do you give a shit if it's Canadian or not? Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. And everybody would be like, yeah, no, that means a big deal to me. Yes, I'm going to do that. Yeah. Right. And it was like, okay. And then if they ever phoned you and said, well, your price was too high. And well, you told me that I could be within 10%. So why are we going back on that now? Mm-hmm. Right?
Well, so the last company I worked with the last year and a half was King Heating.
Yeah.
And
they transitioned over to Canadian manufacturing.
Absolutely. Yeah. We had a lot of fun and a lot of growth over the last year based on that. But we bought the assembly line from the Dutch, moved it into Vancouver. A lot of the components still come from Europe, but we assembled and manufactured, if you will, and packaged it and shipped it out. Yep. And we've seen a huge upswing in our business based on that Made in Canada sticker and us being able to parade that product as Made in Canada now.
Yep. Absolutely.
But yes, you got to get out there and you've got to talk to people and say, this is why maybe our costs are a little bit higher than that other boiler.
Yes.
Right. But we are local.
And I completely agree with, the interesting thing you said, the magic word there, that Made in Canada sticker. And, it kind of boils down to being able to get that message out that buying Made in Canada is important. Now, we're seeing that all over social media now with Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter or Instagram, whatever. Everyone's like, support your local business, don't support the big box because you want your local businesses to stay open, especially during this tough time when everybody's asked to close. And somehow that doesn't trickle. Maybe there's individual contractors out there, small, 4, 5, 10-man shops that are doing a great job of supporting Canadian as much as they possibly can. But then when you get to the big dogs of the industry, the 400-person mechanical contractors, right? When they're buying at volume, when they're doing, and a lot of them are subcontracted to do government projects. I'll use an example, just to use an example. It's not a call on anybody or anything like that. The new cancer center that's coming up here in Calgary, it's a $1.2 something billion, right?
Yeah.
Huge project. And I know that there's probably, definitely an emphasis from the government to source locally. But from the contractor's perspective, I know the mechanical contractor on the job can't possibly source everything locally and stay on budget. And that's where I think the government needs to kind of step in, like you said, Jeff, and subsidize. Hey, what is the excess value? We'll subsidize that. You don't need to subsidize the contract. You can have some sort of a rebate program, some sort of a corporate or a contractor rebate program where on these big $1 billion jobs, you can submit 2 invoices where you have your non-Canadian made product, which is $100, and then your Canadian product that's $117.50, and then the government refunds you that $17.50. Right now, that makes things a little bit questionable, murky in terms of like auditing, and it adds a lot more administrative duties. I think
that is the lead by example, right? Like that, if the government is touting building strong economies, and we're bailing out a lot of companies in Canada that aren't doing business in Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And why is that? Like, is it because it's too much money and we're not paying it, but it's being sold somewhere, right? Yeah. So it's if it's good for somebody else, it has to be good for us.
Yeah.
Well, the rebate play might come into effect there, right? So if maybe they were able to submit invoices to Made in Canada product on a job like that to a federal association, and you say, hey, listen, we use this much Canadian product, maybe they cut them back a check for 10% or whatever it is, right? So supporting local.
Yeah.
The other flip of the coin is that maybe we should be adding more to the tariffs on this product coming in, and promoting Canadian industry again.
Well, I'll tell you right now, like I'd rather pay 10% more than 25% of it going to unemployment.
Well, here's the interesting thing, though. Not only are you, I mean, let's take the tariff portion out of the picture. I am quite a fan of that as a strategy. Let's look at foreign-made product as a whole. One, it's made in, if it's made in a country that doesn't have as strong human right and civil right protections as Canada does, you're kind of putting yourself at risk of supporting businesses and environments that aren't really conducive to either like child labor or unfair labor regulations, labor laws,
environmental
pollution.
That's the other. That was the next thing is that the environmental standards in most of the countries and economies that we pull from are outside of the U.S. Of course. Are not necessarily those that have the strictest environmental regulations. And on top of that, having that extra cost added to your product, you have the carbon footprint to get that product here, right? And on top of that, you get it to a coastline, and then from there ship it in, train it in. Especially where we're landlocked here, so all that costs something outside of just dollars and cents. And I think that we have been so trained to look at that. What is the total plus GST? That's all I care about right now, right? And I almost think that if you impose a higher tariff or a tax or a duty or something on a lot of these products coming in, I think things are going to be a little bit more expensive day one, maybe day 10, maybe day 100, maybe day 300. But maybe when you get into year 3, year 4, year 5, you have Canadian businesses that are thriving and able to scale up manufacturing, able to scale up production, to be able to, be significantly less expensive. And maybe that 10 or 15% premium comes down to 4 or 5% over the long term, right? And that's supporting,
I don't agree with the tariff thing. Canada's too small. Right, like we're not the U.S. We can't sit there and say, "Hey, we're the biggest consuming country in the world." Like, screw you.
Because they'll hammer us back.
They'll be like, "Oh, okay, we'll just put you on tariffs for everything else you buy, you donkey." Right. So the tariff, I don't think, is actually a good solution. One of the things, and this is a big alert section, is Trump. When Trump first came into office, his big push was getting all the American companies to do manufacturing in the U.S. And there was tax breaks, and there was significant rules to, and there was going to be penalties if you didn't have all of your manufacturing done in the U.S. And there were significant countries, right? Tesla, you buy a car and you're on a 4 or 5 month wait for some of these things, and they manufacture in California, which is which is probably the strictest state to do business in. And the only thing that's preventing them from doing things is cooperation with the government. But he's not moving his manufacturing. He has been adamant in saying, "I will not move my manufacturing anywhere else."
And that's a statement. That's kind of being a strong member of the economy and trying to support, 1, employ people, 2, have locally produced product, and 3, be able to kind of instill pride in the customers that they're supporting local.
And then that's why I say, like, that whole chain reaction. Like, if you see an American built product, it has stickers all over it. Made in America, proudly made in America, all these things.
How often do you see that from a Canadian made product?
Exactly.
Never.
So here's now I've asked Canadian manufacturers who do work in North America, and I'm like, why is that not on every friggin' box, made in Canada? Well, I'll tell you why, Jeff. Because we do 50% of our business in the U.S.
Right.
If we start saying proudly made in Canada, we lost 50% of our business because now they're going to buy American. And so I'm sitting there going, shit.
Well,
but I mean, would that 50% be made up because of made in Canada for Canada, right? Like you said, you saw a significant boost at your previous company when you started announcing made in Canada, right?
Absolutely.
So I mean, like, would that kind of change what you were selling in the U.S. with that product? That significant?
We weren't down in the U.S. very much at that point.
Okay.
We were starting to move down there this year, of course, but then we had some supply issues on some of the components out of Europe, them shutting down the countries a lot earlier. So, it kind of put that on the back burner. But for us, that was going to be a challenge. I mean, we're going to have to take those stickers off the box when we ship down there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Because they don't want to see that made in Canada on the box or on the boiler itself.
But I mean, like think about that for a second. Like, you think about how proud Americans are about American made stuff and how people have to shift in order to do business down there. Like, I don't understand why that's not the same pride that we have in Canada. Right.
I don't know that mindset. Like, Canadians are very proud people. We love our country, but you do not see people flagging have the flags outside the house like they down in the U.S.
If I drive around my neighborhood, I've got an Irish flag, I've got a Filipino flag, an Italian flag, and you're right. I see the big flags at the car dealerships, but that's because they're 150 feet high, so that they can be seen from everywhere in the prairies, right?
Or Superstore, or whatever,
exactly.
Right?
But I mean, I do think that Canada in the last 25, 30 years have really lost their identity, right? Yeah. Like we're not really being educated. There's nothing that we really hold tried and true to Canada as much. And I say that knowing that, like, I think Albertans are like Texans, right? Like, you're in Edmonton. Like, at first, like, I'm a Calgarian, right? And then I'm an Albertan, then I'm a Western Canadian, then I'm Canadian, and that's the way it is. And that's the same with Texas. Like, there's a lot of pride in being Albertan,
it's
right?
Absolutely. Even in Texas, it's like Central Texas, North Texas, South Texas. It's like Houston, Dallas, Austin. There's pride in individual places there too. It's very similar, absolutely.
Yeah, and so I mean, I think for us, I think that having that push on Canadian products and calling people out for it, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that our outside sales people should be like, this is Canadian, it's 10% more. Use that in your sales pitches to the end user. Use it in your bids, right?
You know, Jeff, something that we always did was if there was a spec, say, for a water heater, a toilet, a faucet, and it was spec'd as a low-end kind of product, I would train all my staff that we don't start there, right? We're going to start with that Toto toilet instead of whatever it was that was spec'd. And we're going to really see if we can push that line. And I would say 75% of the time, we still captured those sales.
Yeah.
Because we had to go out and sell the product, but it's going to last longer. It's going to be more efficient, use less water, what have you.
So creating value in the product.
Showing value, absolutely. It takes more work, right? And a lot of people don't want to, put in more time or effort on that. They just want to get that sale. But it's absolutely there. And I think maybe that's what we have to do with our Canadian product. You're right. Put it right on the quote.
So how did you guys, so going into new home construction, like how did you get that to the end user? Right? Because that's really the trick. If you want, because a builder will say, I can't build a similar house and be 10% higher, right? Because I'm not going to do it. But I mean, what would it take to get that 10% value? And I think that messaging has to go. And I think it has to start from the Canadian manufacturers putting those stickers right on it. For a toilet, put it right on the tank, and you take it off when you move in, right? For the boiler manufacturer, put it right on the front. Put the sticker on so people know that you're buying Canadian.
Absolutely.
Right? If it's the wood in your house, there's a sticker in your unfinished basement or your mechanic room. This house was built with Canadian wood.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And you know what, 20 years ago, guys, when I was out in sales and I would be calling on a builder or what have you and working with them on a specs, we literally he'd cut me a PO sitting in a bar, drinking beer all night long, right? It happened, I don't know how many times. It was a lot of fun, but things have changed. And now, yes, you can quote the mechanical contractor a certain product or whatever, but at the end of the day, that builder makes a decision based on a rebate from the manufacturer.
Yes.
So I think somehow we got to connect those two and have those manufacturers that are made in Canada. There's got to be an incentive there.
So should we forego the rebate and spend it on advertising of?
Well, maybe that, or I don't know, maybe some sort of a federal program.
Yeah.
Right. Federal program to the builders to support Canadian manufacturing, and then we'll give you this, or we'll do this for you, or whatever.
Yeah. So I've been looking for the last 2 days as much as I can to try and find rebates for manufacturing in Canada. And the most I could see was $26 million for all Canadian manufacturing.
Okay.
Keeping in mind that Canada is a 90% export country.
Yeah.
Right, $26 million, 10 provinces, 2.6 million.
I have a question on that. Is that $26 million or $2.6 million go straight to the organization, like the company that's manufacturing?
So it has to. So from what I found, they had to be improving the efficiency of the company. That was towards development of new products, so stuff like that.
Like
it wasn't like to make you more appealing in a bid.
Okay.
We're going to cut a rebate of the difference in the product because you're Canadian. We'll give you can apply for 10% to make up the difference, so you can compete with the China-made stuff. So we'll give you 10%. We'll give you that cost difference so that we can sell Canadian. I only saw it on those products, and if anybody does see it, please correct me. I'd love to get more informed on these.
I mean, it's interesting because $2.6 million per province is barely you're not even scratching 5%.
And actually, of the manufacturers, they did actually do a poll on the manufacturers. More than 50% of them found it so tough and cumbersome to go through the Canadian government website that they just stopped.
They don't even apply for it.
Yeah, it's so confusing, and there's so many if I do this, I don't get that. If it was so confusing that they just I'm not doing this.
It's not worth it. It's too much time.
40% of people said they persevered, they went through it. They would probably not do it a second time, and the other 10% were mostly startups that were going after the grants.
Okay,
right.
Right.
They're the ones that needed the most. And at least those are the ones that are desperate.
But those are also the ones that were
the cash flow.
Yeah, they don't have the cash flow, but those are the ones that they're all their new products in the market. It's so tough to get a business started out here because correct me if I'm wrong, from the wholesale industry, the general feeling from contractors was if it's not out for 6 months or a year or 2 years, don't even tell me about it. I want it on the market for X amount of time.
Tell me
as far as products, you mean?
As far as products, new product, right? New model from a good manufacturer. It was if it hasn't been on the market, I'm not using it.
A lot of guys don't want to be the guinea pig for new product, right? They want to see that it's been used and it's viable and it's cost efficient and everything else. You're absolutely right.
Well, maybe we can that's a good kind of segue into this question that I was kind of thinking about as we're talking about Canadian support and whatnot. 2 or 3 of the largest distribution houses in Canada, the national distribution houses in Canada, 2 out of the 3 national plumbing, and when I say distribution houses, I'm talking about plumbing, heating, HVAC, waterworks.
Yeah.
Within that, bracket. 2 out of the 3 national players are not Canadian.
Yeah.
How is that? And they're the household names. How is that anything valid? And how are independent supply houses like Frontier, for example, and tons of others? I mean, British Columbia used to have a ton, and what we're seeing more and more is the conglomeration of wholesale. I think that's a very interesting topic, and especially it's happening for the most part by American and British companies, right? And that's more and more of these small distribution houses are getting swallowed up because either they're profitable or they offer good competition in certain markets or certain unique categories. What's your thought on how Canadian owned, Canadian operated? I mean, they're all Canadian operated, but Canadian owned businesses, especially on the distribution side, the supply side, the wholesale side, how do they survive in a market where national American and national British companies are able to just come in and snatch businesses and compete with them?
Well, I think first and foremost, it has to do with people, right? You got to have the right people on the street that understand the local markets. Edmonton is certainly different from Calgary. It's different from Lethbridge. So it's understanding those markets and what's viable and how to connect with those contractors or with those builders. So to be viable in any marketplace across Canada, you got to have the right people and then have access to the right product. But at the end of the day, to be competitive, you got to be a part of the right buying group. And that's the biggest thing, right? So as these large organizations get even bigger, their volume is increasing and it brings down their cost of goods.
Maybe you could give us a little bit of a lowdown. I hear the words, the buying groups thrown around quite a bit, the names and kind of what they do. You've probably been, behind the door of maybe not what goes on, but what they're about and what is the purpose of a buying group. So maybe you can give us a little bit of detail, because I know that there's contractors out there that are part of our audience that maybe don't understand what a buying group is, what they do, how they operate, and why they're there, and what their major impact is on the industry.
So we were part of a buying group called Canaplus that evolved into AD over the last few years. And basically it was a group of independent wholesalers right across Canada that connected and gave us the ability to buy from certain manufacturers because we had certain volumes or what have you. So we were able to budget to those manufacturers what kind of volumes we'd buy, and then the following year, as best as we could, obviously. And then basically it was built a price point based on that.
Okay.
So on different products or different categories.
Is that something that primarily is useful and has a lot of impact on commodity products like copper or PEX or cast iron? Is that where it has the most impact? Because those are items that are heavily contested, and there's a lot of back and forth, and those are key aspects of plumbing, heating, and HVAC. Or is it any and if I started a widget manufacturing company and I wanted to get access to be purchased by all of, let's say, X distributors branches across Western Canada, is that the route for me? So where does it really help the distributor more?
The commodity guys, typically there's a little bit of play with the buying groups there, but not a lot.
Okay.
I think for the most part, you have an agent that works for the manufacturer based out of, for the most part, Asia.
Yeah.
Prices change quickly, so you're able to orchestrate a deal based on prices today, even though you're not going to get a product, say, for 120 days, right? So a lot of times it is a gamble because the dollar could change, freight costs, fuel costs, what have you. But yeah, basically commodities are done through an agent through the manufacturer over in Asia. So for the most part, it was for fixtures, water heaters, boilers, big ticket items that manufacturer have to buy components for. They've got a budget for, so we were able to help them with our needs for that following year.
Okay, interesting.
If that makes sense.
I've always kind of I've always kind of very outsidely understood what, if that makes sense. I haven't really gotten a full understanding, so this is good to kind of hear, what the purpose is on either side. Now, with, let's say, buying group support, et cetera, is that something that could potentially, catalyze some change in the industry? Could buying groups potentially be a key, key factor in being able to get Canadian product more visibility, Canadian manufacturers more visibility, and not preferential treatment, but better benefits, preferential purchasing, etc. Is that something that could be instituted?
Yeah. First and foremost, I think manufacturers have to do their job of just that they are in Canada, or certain categories are made in Canada, right? Bringing that to the forefront of at the buying group meetings, or just to the wholesalers in general, or to their agents to push to the wholesalers. And then the wholesalers have to do a better job selling to talking to their salespeople and saying, hey, we need to promote this and this versus this because it's made in Canada, right? And there might be an advantage. Now, as far as getting to the builders, like I mentioned earlier, it's a little trickier. I think it's up to the manufacturer themselves to get in front of them and say, hey, listen, like, we are a made in Canada product. So, it's important you support local made business.
So, you're talking about kind of educating salespeople, educating the reps, et cetera. Maybe I'm just going to kind of pick up and pivot to a different topic, but kind of on a similar lines with and around the wholesale distribution model. I was pretty much born and raised in the UAE. My father is a part of an organization that does something similar within the Middle East and neighboring regions, Africa, China, India, etc. The distribution process there is very different, and I know that it differs country to country. But the way it works, and I've seen it work there, is either you have a manufacturer that works directly with the contractor, or you have a manufacturer that goes through a broker or an agent who also serves as a wholesaler or distributor and warehouses the product. So for the most part, you have single-step distribution. What do you think are the key advantages of a two-step distribution? And the reason I'm asking this question is that, we've had plenty of debate back in my day when I was trying to pioneer a new product in the marketplace, where it's whose responsibility is it to go out and get the contractor's interest in my new product that I'm trying to launch? Is it me, the factory rep, me, the agent, or me, the wholesale outside sales rep? Right? Who carries that responsibility, and what do you think are the different roles, and how, because I know that if you rewind 30 years, probably, you had agents, but for the most part, the wholesale guys, from what I understand, talking to some of the veterans in the industry, the wholesale reps were the ones doing the technical sale. The wholesale reps were the ones out there selling to the contractor. The only thing that, the key thing that the agent added was specification stuff for commercial projects. They worked with engineers. They got product spec. They worked with builders getting product spec. Why has the wholesale outside sales reps job changed so much in a decade or two? I find that more and more wholesale sales reps.
Can I have a notepad here?
This is all one question. How do you think?
I'm lost.
Yeah, red.
The kind of the point of my question more than anything is we've kind of moved away from the wholesale sales agent or the wholesale sales rep being a technically skilled, product knowledge heavy, value add individual to someone who is, for the most part, and what I've seen as a generalization in the industry, someone who is, kind of an order taker. Right, and there's like, what products are spec'd? I'll sell you that. Right. Well, what's the price that you need? And this isn't a knock on any individuals, but from a perspective,
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. As one of the things I'm very proud of is I would sit down and have a sales meeting with our guys, every couple of weeks, and we'd launch a new product. I'd have a manufacturer in, and the expectation was to go and sell it to the marketplace, right, and not rely on the reps to do our work. I didn't want our team becoming order takers, so we were driving the market. And with that, as you're a leader, yes, it takes more time and effort, but you're able to maybe make a little bit of money. I think a lot of it has to do with laziness, and I think some of it has to do with the fact that there's such a wide range of product nowadays. There's just not the time to do the technical training on all those products.
But do you think it's because, like for boilers, like you're familiar with boilers, do you think it's because we've got all the major wholesales having access to all boiler brands, right?
Yeah.
Like there's no way in hell that they can know 12 different boiler lines and sell it there. So what they're hoping for is, you're spec'd perfect, I just got to be a price then, right?
Right.
And then like, how many times in your sales meetings every 2 weeks, so 26 meetings a year, did you have somebody come in and say, I could sell this widget if it was this brand, because that's what everybody else has, and that's what, like, and you sat there and you just cringe and be like, but we're not going to be a lower price, you donkey. We could have access to it, but anyways. Yeah, exactly. And so that's really where I think that the salespeople have fallen short, is that they think it's a number. right? When we go back to talking about building that value again, right?
Yes,
And
absolutely.
so the biggest wholesales that employ the most people are like, well, yeah, just you can take any sale because we can buy it even if it's not in our catalog. We'll get it because we're X. Right.
Yeah. No, I agree, Jeff. As a certain product becomes more of a commodity, I guess, because everybody has access to it. Yes, the only thing that they can sell it on is price, right?
Yep.
So how much money do they really want to invest in their people and training and everything else when, hey, just phone the rep,
Yeah.
Take the order. If there's a problem, phone Jeff, he'll fix it.
Yep.
We're not going to invest any time because we're not making much on it.
So I guess like going from the wholesale side into the manufacturing side, how much was that part of your sales strategy was saying, listen, we're aligning ourselves with you. Like if you're not successful, I'm not going to be successful.
So actually, and in between that period, I actually worked for a plumbing contractor for 6 months.
Yes, that's right.
So I got his vision on how the wholesale don't bring value, should have brought value.
Yep.
The expectations, I guess.
And what was his perspective on that?
Well, my perspective, I did a lot of the buying. I was quoting a lot of the jobs. And to be quite honest, I didn't feel I was bringing them the value because I wasn't a tradesperson. So I would getting 80% of the jobs I quoted. The problem was when I went and talked to these homeowners or builders or whatever, I'd come back and say, okay, guys, here's the measurements. What do I do? Yeah. Right. So I never thought I could bring the full value of Chris Rupp until I went and got my journeyman ticket. So, but anyways, for those 6 months, a lot of those wholesale guys would come in with their donuts every Tuesday and here you go. You got an order for me and see you next week. And I'm like, what the hell is this?
The epitome of an order taker.
Well, that's funny because I mean we joke about it. We joked about it on our second podcast there. We said wholesale, half sale, right? It's kind of a bit of a running joke in the industry because one, it's true in a lot of situations, right? And there's individuals and outliers such as yourself and some of the people that you've trained to excel within the industry. And it's obvious that those people are successful because you turn around and you say, okay, within the industry in the Edmonton area, who are the top 3 salespeople? And you can list them off and you'll be like, okay, because why? Because those people go in, they bring value.
Difference makers.
Yeah, exactly, right? And it's a philosophy, it's the idea, it's the mentality. How do I go in? What am I trying to accomplish here? I'm not just trying to get this order. I'm trying to build a relationship with this customer and get the next order and the next order and the next order without having to come in every week and ask for it. I can just build that relationship so that I know that order is going to come. And I think you maybe experienced something very unique to go from wholesale into contracting, and then into manufacturing. Right? It's such a huge paradigm shift. Even for myself, I went from manufacturing to agency and then to wholesale. And to be honest, there's such a difference in attitude in each of those elements of the business. And I can't even imagine how different, living and breathing in that contractor's world would be because there's so much more at stake when you're a contractor. There's liability, there's litigation, there's so much receivables that you carry, so much money that you're, always in arrears waiting for payments on. So the stakes are so high. And I mean, I find that would probably have been a very, very unique experience to kind of come back onto the sales side and go, okay, I get it. When the contractor says they can't bet on me because they don't know who I am, I get it. Because they're, due $90,000 payment from a builder who's balking and doesn't want to, pay. So, and here I am asking them to buy a boiler or a widget or a hot water heater or a unit heater that they've never used and they don't understand. And to buy 200 of them for a commercial project is a huge risk for them, right?
Yeah.
So there's this,
and further to that, one of your previous sessions, you guys were talking about training, and Jeff was saying, and I don't agree with evening training, and I'm 100% for that. But it's like when do you fit that in to bring that? Because when I worked for that mechanical contractor, we were a service contract. We were working on everything, and our guys were not trained. Right. So they're usually phoning the rep or phoning me to phone the rep because they need this part or this is going on with it. Or YouTubing it. Exactly. So it's how do we better train our our contractors, so they're familiar with it and they can go in and feel confident and get it fixed.
But and then I guess rolling full circle, that is the really attaching yourself to products, right?
Yes. Yes.
So knowing a product. So if a wholesale is committed, so you worked for a smaller wholesale Western Canada, and the biggest fear is that we're going to do all the sales, and then they're going to move to one of the national wholesales, right? But I mean, if there was that commitment where you could confidently say, no, this is a long-term relationship, then the contractor felt comfortable, and they didn't really go outside of their spec, right? Because then they could say, well, hey, I proudly service and maintain and repair this boiler brand, right?
So I guess going back to your previous question, Jeff, you were talking about my King heating days with Eco King. That's what I was doing, is I could care less about getting a job, right?
Yes.
I wanted to own that contractor. So as I was setting up meetings throughout the prairies and working with key strategic guys to help me drive the marketplace, it was training, support, parts, all the literature they needed, everything that they had. And then all of a sudden the business just started rolling, right? Yeah. Well, I mean, never mind the one-off PO, he's ordering, 10 boilers at a time or 15. And all of a sudden you see this exponential growth because you gave them that support and that value that they needed, and they weren't going to quote or install anything else.
Okay. So now going back to the training, did you find that the people that were buying those 10 and 15 boilers at a time would say, no, we'll make the time to train during the day. It's worth our investment to make sure that we could come in at 7 a.m, noon, whatever. At 5 o'clock, everybody's tired, right?
Yeah.
So would you find that those partnerships were more flexible in the hours that they would allow training?
Yes, because they were relationship driven from years gone by, right? Those are 20-year relationships, so they know that I'm going to bring value, and I'm not just bringing them lunch and not
a box of donuts
or doing a sales pitch, right?
Yeah.
But for the most part, I felt that the afternoons, so from noon on, you run 2 or 3. The guys are coming back from, the morning rush or what have you. You have a sandwich and you do an hour or an hour and a half session, and you do that consistently over the course of a couple of months, right? To give them that full training that they need.
So that was kind of your key to success, was keep it 45 minutes, an hour and a half.
Yeah, absolutely.
In multiple training, different topics.
Continuous learning. Almost.
Correct.
And I think that's a big... I think that's something that a lot of organizations should take a look at, because I know that, guys get flown out, and I think this is more of like a rewards trip or whatever, where they get flown out somewhere and they do, a 3-day intensive training. They do a lot of drinking in the evenings, go to a football game.
No, they don't.
No.
I mean, I've been a part of those.
Maybe at Bibby, but
right. And you kind of look back and go, well, while a lot of those, sessions are valued, and then they have a good time, and they develop a strong affinity towards a particular brand or a particular manufacturer, I almost think that the method of 45 minutes to an hour and a half stepped out over a 3-month period, where you have whatever it is, training Tuesday, right? And you come in at 2 p.m., you do an hour with folks, and today we're talking about heat exchanger replacement, and then you go in and talk just about that, and then guys are fresh, they go out onto site, and you come back, and what's going to happen is that as they're going out installing some of these products, they're going to come up with issues, especially if they've already bought into the brand and they're buying the products. They're going to get a significant amount of know-how by being on the street with the product. So they're going to have questions. They're going to demand certain things of the training. And that's when that whole partnership part of this equation comes into play, where they contribute to their own learning. They request what they want to learn. So it almost becomes, when you have that relationship, as opposed to, hey, I'm just doing a 2-hour PowerPoint at the lunchroom this week. Let's, whoever
what kind
wants
of
to
donuts
show
do you guys
up.
want?
So I mean, that as opposed to, individually getting in front of the contractor and say, hey, I'd like to come to your office, train your people over the course of the next 3 months. I don't know any contractor that would say no thanks.
And the other key to that is hands-on, right?
Yeah.
Bring some equipment there. They can get their hands dirty and play with things.
Yeah.
I mean, what we would do with our boilers is we had in Vancouver, when we would fly groups out, we had a bunch of boilers on the wall, and we would go through the training process, and then we'd go in there and we'd mess it up and say, okay, fix it. It's code 9.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they'd get in there and they'd have to do it. And they're like, wow, okay, cool. So they're building that confidence.
Yeah.
So if you ever worked for a wholesale again, would it be like daily training from all your manufacturer partners?
I want to see you guys every day.
This week we're fixing toilets. Next week we're fixing boilers. Like, there is training.
Oh man, that's funny.
But constructive training, right? Again, and I think consistent. Like, you don't want to overbear the guys and do 2, 3, 4 hour sessions. It's too much.
Yeah.
There's only going to be so much that they can take in, and the rest is just in one ear and out the other. They're tired.
Well, this day and age, we don't have the attention span. It's not a knock. It's just the evolution of cell phones and constant distractions and everything is you can't keep your head in it more than an hour and 15 hour and a half.
No. Yeah. And I think maybe companies should even adapt to have a lot of their training, kind of made into bite-sized consumable content for these media sources, right? You can have a boiler training that you do a long form, and then you kind of take small snippets of it, turn it into either videos or photos or somebody talking into the screen with overlay of something, and put it out there on these media sources, the Facebooks, the LinkedIns, the Twitters, the Instagrams, the whatever, so that folks that are interested and already follow your business actually are getting value out of following your business.
Well, that was going to be my next question. You think with today, do you think that making training online is going to be something that people will pay attention or make time to do? Or do you think that they will still have too many distractions around them?
Interesting question.
Right?
I think the world is obviously evolving going through COVID, right? A lot of these Zoom meetings are taking place and just a different way of communicating. I mean, I personally can't wait to get back to the day where you can shake somebody's hand and look them in the eyes, just that old school mentality. But you're right. A lot of training is going to be done through virtual aspects.
So how do you think that'll happen? Like, and I agree with what you said earlier about having the hands-on stuff.
Yeah.
Like how do we get that proper mix? Is that something that you would send a boiler to a larger company or to some people? Like now instead of having 5 demos, you got like 40 demos and it's like, if you want a live boiler, sign up and pay the shipping and.
Well, I'll give a plug to a manufacturer, but with A.O. Smith, they did that. They set up a training center I think it was in Nashville, and they'd have a trainer come in, and I think it was one a month, and the wholesales would log in. The local rep would come by the wholesale with that product they're talking about that day, and they would get into the anchors, the servicing and maintaining and all that stuff of that product with it visually right there. So they could walk up as he's going through it. And I thought that was really cool because you had the hands-on experience, the local rep to ask questions while you're watching the training online. And that's been undergoing for years with A.O. Smith. And I thought that was next level training.
Yeah.
Because that saves a huge expenditure on bringing people out and
absolutely.
Having them. And it also allows for kind of a distribution of resources, right? Because if you're in a small town, Yorkton, Saskatchewan, where there's only one wholesale office, but you want to get trained and there aren't enough reps coming through that location. If something like this happens where, that if they sign a national relationship or a regional relationship with a particular brand, you can have that product stocked in every single shop. And that is the training product, and then you run weekly or monthly trainings. And
but again, you can't. As a wholesale, I think you have to commit to 1 or 2 brands. You can't. You can't do that with 7
everything.
brands.
No.
You have so as a wholesale, you have to commit to 1 or 2 brands.
Absolutely.
So because
but I again, like I say that because. Number one, your salespeople aren't going to know all the sales facts for 7 different boilers, 100%. So they're only going to pick 1 or 2 anyway. right? Number two, the wholesale doesn't have enough shelf space. We're not having 400,000 square foot warehouses where we can keep products and support those products on the shelf for this various amount of brands.
This is a great segue to my next extremely long question.
Oh God!
List of questions.
Go to the bathroom now, Chris.
So the question is a very, very simple, very on point with what Jeff said. Why is it that most distributors aren't able to just narrow down to 2 or 3 lines within categories? I know that I've been.
Well, I think we talked about that. We said, from a wholesale level, how many sales reps would you have in a week, Chris?
Oh, yeah. I would have 20, 30 a week coming in my door.
And how many would say, I don't care if you stock it. You sell it and we'll ship it to you. And we'll give you the same price as the person that's stocking it.
All of them.
Right?
So if this isn't a distributor problem, this isn't a agent problem, I think this is an industry problem.
No, it is an industry problem, because in order for the wholesales to stay competitive with every other wholesale, then they can't handcuff their guys. Unless a wholesale says, no, we are staying with these 2 products and this is how you're going to sell them. And this is building up the value, like a core thing that is very successful for your previous company, right?
Yeah.
The sales guys, I think the best sales guy in Edmonton works for that company, right? Hands down, relationship based. When he gets a product and if he's not happy, he'll phone the rep and bitch them out.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's where you take off the gloves, and it's like, no, guys, you can phone the rep, and if you're having an issue, deal with it, right? It doesn't have to go through 100 channels.
I agree. And I think a lot of the time, I think a big education process needs to go into the outside sales team. For any organization, whether it's a rep,
it's a top-down mentality. Do you think so, Chris?
Absolutely.
I think you're concurring with me here, because education comes from the top down. The training comes from the top down. It's like, hey, we're not selling on price. We're selling on value, and this product is significantly better value. It's made in Canada. It saves the contractor labor time. There's all these things that go into this. That's why we're partnered with them. That's why they're extending a semi-exclusive
100%.
with us, right?
Absolutely.
So,
it's the vision from the top to show value, and you got to be able to train your salespeople, spend the time and the effort into it to show them why we support certain products.
So
and we're not going to become an order taker. So if they want to buy X, you got to convince them to buy Y from you.
Yeah.
Because we're not selling X.
So I think personally what the wholesales and manufacturers have to do, because especially for a small wholesale that is nervous about going out and growing the business in their local area, keeping in mind that each city is a very different area, right? That there needs to be agreements of, if we increase sales 15%, then we automatically get renewed as one of 2 distributors for the next year.
Yeah.
Right. There has to be, screw the buying group, screw all that. This is a partnership. We're going into it. If I do my job, this is the expectation. We set those expectations every year. Our expectation is you're going to increase sales 10% this year.
I mean, it's interesting because, that's a very, very interesting technique. Another one that I heard was, and we used when I was working with Greg Gillespie, and I think he mentioned it on our episode there, is, let's say you're a new business trying to establish yourself in a region, and the first thing you do is you approach the independents or the independent distributors, because they're the ones that don't have entrenched national relationships and exclusivity agreements, so you might have a better chance with independents. You approach an independent and you say, hey, this is the program XYZ, and regardless of what happens, regardless of how much the business grows, the next stocking wholesaler always has to bring in, an X. If the first wholesaler to come on board has to bring in, $30,000 worth of inventory and maintain $30,000 of inventory, the next supplier, whether they're an independent or whether they're a national within that region, has to buy in either double or triple that inventory as an opening order, not part of a project, not part of an existing PO, to be
That's
able
just to get on the
That's
shelf.
just to get on as a stocking distributor for that product. That way, you protect your incumbent, and you increase your ability to sell right out the gate when you have that double or triple opening.
Now are you speaking, Vresh, with that first wholesaler that's supporting you, not meeting their budgets with that company or their increases, or just in general?
In general, that was the thing, is that regardless of whether, let's say, wholesale A is the first one that I've approached, they're doing phenomenally. They've grown the business. First year they've doubled it, then they've gone up by 50%, and they've gone up by 25%, and now we're at the point where there's a lot of customers out there that maybe don't deal with wholesale A, and I need to expand my offering to someone else in town so that I can be everywhere, be with more contractors or get to more contractors. So your wholesale A's opening stock order was $30,000. They're currently maintaining $50,000 of inventory on their shelves. To bring on wholesale B has to put $100,000 opening PO that isn't related to an existing order for a contractor or an existing project. So it's standalone inventory order, doubling the current inventory of the existing.
But no offense, Vresh, that's where I would be pissed off.
Interesting. Okay.
With the manufacturer.
Okay.
Because the type of manager I was with my sales team and training them on that product, if they're out driving the spec, growing some interest in the market, and all of a sudden it's open to another distributor, that's where you get order takers in our industry.
Yeah.
Right?
And especially, and you said something very key there was like that first wholesale is growing 50% and then 25%. Like if you're seeing those kind of growth and you open up another one, that's a kick in the beats.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So here's the question then. It's if I'm doing business with X wholesaler, we're doing very well, but there's this, because of the way that they are very similar to the way we're doing businesses, they build partnerships with manufacturers and are exclusive or semi-exclusive to manufacturers. The same way they have a relationship with certain contractors. They're exclusive or semi-exclusive to certain contractors. They don't go out and try to get every contractor's business. Now there's maybe 10, 15, 20, maybe 50% of the market that I, as a manufacturer, can't get to because my only distribution house that I'm selling through is not able to do business.
But see, that's where I think the partnership is so important, right? Like here, I've been talking to this company. They say they don't deal with you guys. I've had conversations. They want to buy. I think that is where the partnership comes in. It's like, so how are we going to get in there? How are we going to overcome this? Not what are you going to do about it, or what can I do about it? Because what can I do about it is the simple thing is to open up a second wholesale.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you're right.
But collectively, how can we get in there?
How can we do it?
As partners?
And I think that's the only thing that will prevent a saturation of a product in a single marketplace where 7 or 8 or 10 wholesales are selling that product in one city.
And so if, let's say, in that scenario, I mean, I kind of see your guys' point. I also disagree in a sense that a lot of scenarios, there's contractors that don't do business with wholesale. There are wholesales that also don't, in turn, do business with certain contractors because of old entrenched, lack of relationship or issues. And hey, I'm all for synergy and trying to go in and be, a partner. And that's the ideal situation.
No, but I think that's what we said is at the beginning of that relationship, it's sitting down and laying out the parameters of them maintaining exclusivity or semi-exclusivity. If they're hitting 10 and 15%, do you need that one contractor?
What if it's not one? That was my question. If it's not one, if it's 25% of the market.
But again, they're growing 15% year over year.
So I'll share a story with you guys. Yes. So with King Heating, we had the Eco King line, obviously, right? And so we had an exclusive with certain distributors right across Canada. In northern Alberta, we had an opportunity with a contractor that didn't necessarily deal with a wholesaler that was the distributor of our product, but they were doing a phenomenal job for Eco King in general. So what I was able to do was we created a second line of products that had subtle changes, that was different, and it was labeled as something else. So it still protected the Eco King product, but we had a second line that we were able to sell to that contractor. So we didn't upset anybody. We maintained, margins, made some subtle differences, and we were able to capture both.
Yep.
Interesting. That's a kind of a completely out of the box.
And that's what I'm about, outside the box, right? Because if I had just opened that up to a second wholesale, what would have happened is they were fighting for the same guys other than that one contractor. Margins would have went like this. Now I'm the biggest asshole in the block.
Yeah. And that's where we enter the buying groups, right? Because now it's all about what rebate can I get? Because I can only sell it for 3% profit.
Let's talk about that. That's an interesting.
Well, no. Let's just wait on that for 1 second, right? because that's where I think that people have stopped having. They're not having those tough conversations because it's not a partnership, right? I think that the value of the partnership has been cast aside for too long, and I think that people are afraid to sit in a room and say, "We can't sell your product because it keeps on fucking breaking." What are you going to do about that? Like, you want me 15%, but your failure rate is here, right? Yeah. Because a lot of people will just be like, you know what, that thing's failing. We're not even going to invest time in it. Let's just get another product.
Right.
And vice versa, right? Oh, they're not selling it, so let's just get another wholesale.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the relationship-based selling has gone out the window, and it's probably due to cell phones and the information and everything like that happening. And there's no contract based on the relationship and sales. Right?
One of the things that we did also differently is none of our salespeople had access to any costs. Right. I think that is far to
prevent them from being like, oh, well, we're making 10 points on this. Like, I can sell it for 8
we can get
points.
by with 5.
Yeah.
We don't need 10.
Yeah.
Right. And then I'm going to get all these orders.
Yep.
So I wanted my guys to understand the market. Whatever the market is, we'll sell at the market. Right. If it's $1,000 for a water heater, we'll be there. If it's 200, we'll be there. But we're going to be
then
competitive.
you could take that back to the manufacturer and have an open
100%.
dialogue. Yeah.
I had that. I would do all the negotiating with the manufacturer based on that info. But with accessibility to costs and stuff to a lot of salespeople within different wholesaler channels, all they do is they drive the market down.
Now, is that all salespeople, or is that like progressively as they spend more time in the field, they're getting involved with bigger projects, bigger contractors? You would start introducing that, or was that just cut? Like, our sales guys didn't have access.
Completely out. Their job was to build relationships.
Okay.
They were business development. They were out all the time. They might be in the office kind of a couple hours a week. They're out driving the marketplace and building those relationships. Now, if they captured a big project or one of their guys did, then basically I would have an infrastructure inside salespeople or what have you, and they would work with me on different cost structures from different manufacturers for that job.
Okay.
So they would be a little more involved in the costing side.
Okay. So so now here's the last little bit, I guess, to kind of finish up. What's the one thing that, now that you've been on a couple of different sides, what would you hope for would change in the industry in order to be better from either perspective?
At all angles.
Wow. That's a good question.
I want a better selection of donuts. That's
we want them twice a week.
Yeah, exactly.
Not just Fridays. I think investing from the wholesale side, investing more in their people. Spending the time with doing the training, supporting their local rep agencies on new product. When they're out talking to contractors, they're helping orchestrate and drive the brand or the vision or made in Canada product. For manufacturers, I guess it's just supporting the wholesalers and a little bit more. And I think the relationship between the two is so important, like I said, so the wholesaler isn't just trying to shuffle everything off to the reps or the manufacturers. They've got to both invest in that product.
And so do you think that beginning negotiating, like having a contract of exclusivity, semi-exclusivity, you think that would be something that could be implemented to success?
I think it has to. Absolutely. Yeah. I think if you're going to invest time and money on a certain product, you want to make sure that you're able to recoup some of those costs, right? By growing the line. So
Something that we talked about, it's kind of around this topic, is the number of accounts that an outside salesperson is assigned.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
Because I know many an outside salesperson that have 400 accounts, and there's probably 200 of them they've either never seen.
It's like having 7 boiler lines.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I know that when we worked together at the distribution firm that we did, it was a strict 50 limit. And if you work and nothing happens, you drop them, give them to somebody else, and you get a new one. And that you work was it 50 or something like that? It
was something that I implemented where it was, so the reasoning behind it was you had 50 accounts, right? And you would level them 1 through 5, right? Yeah. 5 would be, profitable with high volume sales, right? And that then you would spend 2.5% to 5% of your time with that, right?
Right.
Then you'd have your level 4, which was either profitable or high volume sales, right? So you could spend time, but that was 2.5% of your time, right? Then you had your level 3s that were low profit, low sales volume, and then level 2 and 1 were typically level 2 was they had an account, but didn't do a lot of volume, didn't do anything. Level 1 was cash account. If a level 1 was on your list, you kind of laughed and just put it to the side, right? Because they're as about committed to you as you are to them at that point, right?
So what's your thought on that?
So getting to that, the whole point of those 5 levels were, you can go and shake 2 hands a day, like in an 8-hour day, right? You can shake 2 hands a day, right? To maintain the relationships, talk about new products. You're investing the same amount of time in as that company has invested in you.
Yeah.
Level 4, you could phone them up. You could be very personal. Level 3 was emails, right? And that was about 5-6 hours a day in order to shake 2 hands, in order to make personal phone calls that last 5 minutes or an hour and a half, right?
Yeah.
And then sitting down and writing a personal email to 5 people. Mm-hmm. So you could do 10 touches in a day. You could do that for 5 days in a week, right? And that was actually working an account, right? So 50 account was my rule, because everything that I do with sales was relationship-based selling, right? So if somebody started buying with volume, you would start introducing an inside salesperson, and they would take over the day-to-day account, but you would still be dealing with the decision maker. Right. So 50 accounts for me was my cap, not everybody's cap.
But you would prefer it to be lower than that?
No, 50 was a good number. 50 allows you to shake hands. 50 allows you to send out your email of like upcoming training, stuff like that like keeps you relevant. You can phone call with the smaller up and coming that are on the tools themselves and probably don't want to see you because it's an inconvenience. Yeah. Right. So they could sit there and work on a boiler or something because they're professionals and they've probably done the training, so they can talk to you while they're working, right? Like chewing gum and walking here, guys, right?
Yeah.
But that would allow you to stay in contact, understand your customer, and grow your customer, not just cast a wide swath and, hey, I'm the lowest price over here. Yeah. Right? Buy from me this week. Hey, I got a truck full of black toilets. So 50 accounts for me was a way to really develop your accounts. And some accounts are going to go from a 5 to a 3 and a 3 to a 5, right? But the only way you're going to know that is by spending time. So I guess what you're asking is, what are your thoughts on how many accounts somebody can successfully do?
You know what? It honestly depends on the territory that guy's looking after. So there's certain territories, say Fort McMurray, right, where you're not going to send a sales guy up there to call on 5 accounts because that's his max that day. Yeah. So when he would do that travel up there, he might call on 20 accounts over the course of a day and a half, 2 days. So the rural sales guys, it really depends on the areas that they're in, and how many contractors are there and what kind of relationships they have. For me, a lot of it was done after hours. I'm out skidooing with these guys, or quadding, or fishing, or having a family barbecue, because I just built those relationships with them. So it wasn't necessarily 8 to 5. That was it.
Yeah.
Where if you have a sales guy in the city calling on a lot of the larger accounts, they're more time consuming, then he might not have the as many, I guess, to look after. So I always tried to give them a little bit of everything. So they've got a good grasp on service contractors, housing, commercial. So they had a good grasp on all the different areas, I guess.
Industries, markets.
Of the industry. Yeah.
Very interesting. Awesome.
So the rule of thumb that I was always taught, Jeff, was you want to reach out to 10 accounts a day. That was Mr. Wayne Walker taught me that years ago. So whether it's in person or over the phone, it was never email. Other than, like you said, training or whatever, maybe in the evening you're sending those out. It was always that personal touch, right? Text, Christmas time, texting all my customers, hey, Merry Christmas to you and your family. The little things that they remember. For me, a big success was, instead of bringing the donuts, I would bring fruit baskets.
So was this like a 2010 thing? Like, no more donuts, everybody's fat. Like, here's your fruit now.
No. Actually, it was before that. But I knew that the 5 other wholesalers that had just walked in that door all brought donuts. I was like, fuck, mine's just going to be at the bottom of the pile, and they don't give a shit, and they're not going to appreciate it. So I would bring bananas and oranges, do fruit baskets, and mine always got 8, and they remembered it was from me. So I stood out from everybody else.
So, I mean, it kind of, there's a bit of a trend. It's like, Chris seems to have an outlier trend when it comes to a lot of different things in kind of the way that you operate, the way that you build your sales team, the way that you educate people. Is there anything, major influences that have kind of, given you that, foresight or the forethought to be able to kind of see what's happening and step out of it and be outside the box? Even like your example of how you dealt with the new customer that wanted to buy from you. All of these things seem to be, there's a common theme running from what I can kind of gather, is that Chris Rupp likes to be outside the box. Right? What is there like an inspiration, a philosophy behind it? Is there any teachings, any people behind that?
I don't think so, Vresh. I mean, I had great mentors, guys like Doug Neff and Wayne Walker, and these old school guys that have been in the industry a long time, and relationships meant a lot to them. But I think as far as thinking outside the box, it's just how I'm built. Right. So I'm constantly looking at things a different way than just the one way that we always look at it. Share a trade secret, I guess. One of the things that we did that we grew our business exponentially on was a lot of wholesales would send their guys over to us at Frontier to do warranty, Renai parts and A.O. Smith part, all this stuff we didn't even sell. So at first it just pissed me off. And secondly, I'm like, well, now I'm getting FaceTime with this guy, so we have an opportunity to grow our business, and I'll look after it even though we don't sell it. So then I had certain manufacturers coming to me, well, why are you doing this? You don't even sell our product. I'm like, well, because we're good at it. But, one of those bad days, I guess, for me is I sent Jeff Holloway at A.O. Smith, who's become a very good friend of mine. I sent him a debit note for $60,000. And he phoned me right away. He's like, what the hell is this? I'm like, this is a salary for one person looking after a bunch of debits for the year on warranty parts. He's like, well, you can't do that. I'm like, yeah, I can. And anyways, so I started thinking how I could change and be better and maybe make a little bit of revenue off it. So we created like a warranty fee where we would charge guys a modest fee, $20, $25. We'd look after it, and it was handled immediately. And it didn't no matter what it was. If it was a furnace we didn't sell, or a boiler or whatever. And it was done within 24 hours. And what we did was over the course of a year, we generated $50,000 worth of income based on that.
Which is what you said was a guy's full salary,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I paid for a salary, and then we actually did it company wide. And obviously there was a lot more sales involved in those SKUs, right?
Do you think it was a kick in the beat for the manufacturer saying like, here's this wholesale that's not even selling our product, and our own people, like our partners, can't even do this?
Yeah, it was. It was just to raise some eyebrows, I guess, and get his attention, and which I obviously got. Right, he phoned me right away.
Yeah.
But I was a little bit frustrated just in the whole process of how that was all handled.
Yeah.
Since it's changed, a lot of things are done on an app or whatever now. But for us, it worked out very well. We captured it again, and a new audience, got new contractors coming in the door, and we created a little extra revenue. And in fact, to one of the manufacturers caught wind of this, and they asked me to do a presentation for CIPH. And I was like, why would I do that?
Yeah.
Why do I
don't want to share
this? Other competitors knowing this, right? We've done a good job, and we're gonna keep it close to our chest.
Yeah.
That's it's quite it's very interesting and very heartening to hear kind of the difference in your business philosophy. If you were to kind of leave a parting thought or something like that, what does the future look like for Chris Rupp?
Well, so with the COVID, having my daughter and my wife are both asthmatic. So we made the decision the third week of March that we were going to self-isolate and hang out at home. So for a while I started to work from home, and then we had a downtrend in our business. Our demand outstripped the supply with King Heating, with a lot of our products coming from Europe. So I took a layoff. I don't have a honey-do list anymore. Everything's done. I built decks and painted the house, and so I'm ready to get back to work. I have accepted an offer.
Very nice.
So I don't want to say where or when, but where, but I will be starting June 1st. I'm very excited by the opportunity. And
that's
wholesale manufacturing. Can you share that? Or?
It's in the wholesale.
Attaboy.
Wholesale. Okay, very good.
Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of training coming up somewhere.
Yeah.
There you go. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And
thanks.
for you guys, again, I love the platform. I've been watching all your videos. I think you're doing a tremendous job. And I wish you nothing but success. I really do. You started the business in very tough, challenging times. So I really hope that things go well for you. And any way I can support you or promote you, I'd be happy to do.
Well, we're going to be phoning you June 15th to see the first 2 weeks, I think.
Perfect.
Well, thanks again, Chris. I really appreciate your time, your thoughts, and kind of sharing a little bit of your brain with us. Let people know how to find you: LinkedIn, Instagram. That's our game here. So you're just Chris RUPP on LinkedIn,
correct?
And on Instagram, it's.
I don't get into a lot of the other social media stuff.
Okay, that's what we're big on. So we're just trying to make sure that people can find you, message you if they have thoughts, if they have business opportunities, etc.
My personal email is oilersfan94@hotmail.ca. So I'm sure you guys love that, but
oilersfan94@hotmail.com. Chris Rupp, thank you very much.
.ca. Come on, Canada. Jeez.
Hey.
Yeah.
oilersfan94@hotmail.ca. Chris Rupp, thank you very much.
Take care, guys. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Chris.
See ya.